Welcome back to The Developing Doctor. I'm Dr. Ben, and this is a show where we talk about what it takes to grow as a clinician, not just the technical training, but the human skills, the business skills, and the often overlooked fundamentals that shape who we become inside this profession. If you've listened to the show before or watched us on YouTube, you know I like the interview format. I tend to bring on people from outside medicine as frequently as I do from inside medicine, so that we can see ourselves more clearly. Recently, we've talked to a communication scholar and wellness experts. Today's conversation is in that same vein, but the angle is different. Today, we're talking about ownership, specifically owning your name, owning your practice, and owning the story your patients hear before they ever sit down near your exam table. We're trained to be excellent clinicians. I don't think any of us were trained to be brand experts. We're not trained to market. We're not trained to read a pro forma or to build a referral network from scratch, or to figure out why our name doesn't come up first when a patient Googles us. And yet, every physician I know who's tried to take over more autonomy on their career, whether that's going fully independent or just protecting their identity inside a group or a big institution, has had to learn those skills the hard way. In those instances, we quickly realize that sometimes medicine isn't the hard part. The medicine is the part we've been training for since we were 18, 19 years old sometimes. The hard part is everything else that has to be true around the medicine for an independent physician to actually thrive, or for someone in a big group to take ownership of who they are and what they stand for. So today I'm excited to bring on someone who has lived this from both sides. As the spouse of a physician who walked away from a group practice into a strict non-compete, and as a marketer who built the brand, the website, the referral strategy, and the financial story that took the practice from zero to over $1 million in revenue in its first year. My guest today is Ashley Gay. Ashley is the founder of Digital Ash Agency, a boutique marketing firm built specifically for physician-owned private practices. She comes to this work with about 2 decades of experience in design and brand strategy across industries. And a few years ago, her work got personal. Her husband, an oculofacial plastic surgeon, left his group practice to set up shop independently. He was under a strict non-compete, no patient list, no guaranteed income, which, as someone who's been an employed physician with a guaranteed salary every month, that sounds terrifying. Ashley built the brand, the website, the referral strategy, and the marketing plan that got the practice funded, and then helped them fill up the practice, which is now thriving. Today, she runs the same playbook for independent physicians across the country, and I think she has something that's going to be really interesting for all of you to hear, whether you're thinking of going independent and setting up your own shop, or you're just trying to create an identity of your own in a big group practice. Ashley, welcome to The Developing Doctor.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I think your background's going to be really interesting to people, and I'd love for you to just share a little bit more of your story and how you wound up sitting in this chair.
Sure. Sure. So, my husband and I were met and married 2 years before his medical journey began. So, I was there for just after MCAT, I want to say, just after the MCAT tests. But as far as applying for medical school and then moving across the country, applying for residency, applying for fellowship and demo training, we've kind of done that all together. And as we were doing that, I was blessed enough to be able to work remotely kind of before it was a thing. I had a job when we were in Virginia for medical school that I was then able to take with me around. So I worked with a lot of different brands everywhere from like I worked with Capital One all the way to Target. I've had things in Home Depot, packaging in Home Depot, but then I've worked with small businesses and small startups. And that when you're going through medical training, it's kind of like you're not in a position to say no to any work that crosses your desk. And so the breadth of amount of companies and businesses sizes that I worked with is quite extensive. But fast forward to done with training, my husband had always he'd want to be a doctor since he was about 8 years old. He's always wanted to be a doctor and he always wanted to be a surgeon. He needed to be the one in charge. And so he always wanted to be in private practice and dreamed of having his own practice. Well, when we got out of fellowship, like most couples and most families, it was not financially responsible for us to open our own practice and all of the burden and the headache and the debt that you're carrying and things like that. And also, it's not necessarily the most wise decision when you've never worked outside of an academic setting out of training. And so you kind of don't know necessarily how private practice works. There's a little bit of a hustle involved that isn't there for academic. And so it was a great job for the amount of years that he was there. Again, the check came every week and there was building, the practice a little bit. But as these things happen. There are different styles of running a practice, and partnership was just not on the table. It just wasn't coming to fruition. And they were very different people. And his previous employer, his practice is also thriving. However, just the nature of the way this all works is that you're not 100% in charge of your career trajectory if you don't own your own practice, or you do not take it in a way where you do have more ownership over it. And so that is kind of the crossroads and we were at. And as these partnership talks were happening and seemingly not coming to fruition, became more and more apparent to me that I was watching the person that I loved, and we had this goal for him, and we were working so hard as a team to get him there. I was watching him fall out of love with medicine in general. And that's terrifying because when you have this shared goal and you've also built your family's financial future around that, you've got kids around that, you've got a house you purchased around that, it becomes more apparent. It's like, we have to fix this because he can't last another 20 years feeling this way. I think it's leading down a bad path. So it's kind of like, all right, well, what do we want to do here? Do we want to open our own practice and leverage the 6 years of goodwill that he's built up in this community? And also, 6 years is a big referral base, but he had a non-compete. Or do we pick up again and move for the sixth time? And we decided that we'd just, combine our talent and launch this thing because we thought the worst thing that could happen is he could again go work for someone else. We'd end up moving and go work for someone else again. So we decided we'd give it our best shot. And I was able to do this for him. And then the word got out. And so that's what I've been doing exclusively for the last 2 years. And I think it's just because of the unique perspective I have, not only from the doctor side, but from the spouse's side. Because you can imagine when people are going to launch their own practice, they both get on a call, right? I'm talking to a team, usually, if they're married, to be able to speak to more of the anxieties around what it's like to be the spouse. Because there's conflicting. It's kind of like you want your spouse to be fulfilled, but you also, it's scary to change directions after you've been going one way for so long. So that's kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing. And I just think it's incredible to help these doctors who work so hard for so long to be able to build the life that they want.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's such a great story because we don't often talk about the sacrifices that significant others, spouses or family members make on this crazy medical training journey. And so you're absolutely right. It is a commitment of a team when you go on that journey with someone else. And so I love how you mentioned, you brought up team and making the decisions together multiple times. So it sounds like there wasn't really one specific moment or, one major conversation. It sounds like it was probably just a gradual erosion and change in his environment. He thought, you both thought, what, something needs to change, and this was the path that you took.
And I also was very careful, even when he was trying to pick a specialty. I always was careful not to be super pushy, just because it's his work life. I wasn't going to make the decision for him because I didn't want him to look back and be able to not have the amount of ownership that he would want to have over a decision like that. So I wasn't going to push him out or be like, we need to leave. It needed to be his decision, but I needed to have the headspace of being supportive in what happened and being like, okay, well, we're doing this together, and not like you couldn't hang, or well, now we're back to square one. Now we're like med school broke. It was kind of like, all right, well, this is the next adventure, because honestly, this could happen again. And I can't tell you how many stories I get on with people like, oh, we were 2 weeks away of partnership, papers being signed, and they sold the practice. I mean, that happens a lot of times. And not only are you in this, like, what do I do now? It's this level of betrayal, kind of, and the grieving of the plans of the trajectory of what you wanted to do. And so I'm also a real cheerleader of just like, you can do this. If you come to this crossroads and it's not your path, you didn't want it, you didn't want to be your own boss, this was not in the cards, but you don't want to uproot your family again, we got tricks for non-competes, right? We can market around those. We can still leverage your name and the actual brand that you've been building since the second you left residency into practice. You have been building the way you treat people and your reputation for so long that you're going to be okay. Like, it's going to be all right, because dumber people than you, like me, run a business every day. And you can do it too.
Well, I think you just hit on something really important, is that I can't imagine that physicians are easy to work with, right? So we're all driven. We all have this mindset. I mean, we're trained into this mindset that we can do anything that we put our minds to. But the reality is that we have these huge skills gaps that sometimes we're blind to. So what did you bring to the table in this process, that really helped the business be successful?
I think the best thing that we have done is we've understood to stay in our lanes, right? So when you embark on something like this, you have to understand, especially as a spouse working alongside somebody, is that the person with the license makes the ultimate decisions. They're the one that answers to all of the things. So the way that the day to day, like EHR, that's not my day to day. That's his decision to make. However, the way that the website looks, he doesn't do that day to day. So he entrusted that with me. I have seen that certain specialties are more willing to farm out or trust in me and my capabilities more than others. So I don't I know that the people that depend upon referrals to stay alive in their practice tend to like that. They tend to be like, and we're good. But I find that there are people who really are a DIY. They want to know all the things and be involved in all the things. And it does help to, I guess, have an insight of, well, doctors have a certain status in society and they're kind of elevated, right? Well, I've been around y'all for a very long time. I've seen you at your best and I've seen you at your worst. And I'm not intimidated by the title like other people may be. So pushing back, I'm able to push back without any anxiety on my end, really. And I think that also, people respond to that just kind of, oh, okay. And so if you're met at the same level, but also they know that I'm not here to add a zero to my price just because someone's a doctor. That's also something people don't understand. It's just how bootstrapped we all are. And we might bring in a lot of income that has a lot of buckets that it needs to go
Yeah.
into.
A lot of,
Not
lot of overhead sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot of overhead, there's an operating margin, and let's not spend just to spend frivolously on things, and so, I think that people appreciate that, and they respond to it sometimes they decide to work with somebody else, a little bit more of a yes man, but honestly, like, if you don't trust me to do what's best for you, you should be working with someone else.
When I think about marketing, I mean, when I would have been starting out, I mean, I'm in academics, but when I was starting out, I wouldn't have thought about marketing or branding or anything for physicians. And now in kind of the current era, when I think of marketing and branding, I almost think of social media influencers, right? It sometimes has a little bit of a negative connotation to it, but it's so important. So I guess from your perspective, why is it so important for practices to sort of own this part of their business and to understand, that it is an investment, but it's an important investment?
It's an important investment because the world has very much shifted in the last probably since COVID. I know we blame a lot of things on COVID, but probably since COVID, the way, private equity is coming into healthcare and they are treating people like people rather than potential patients. And it's starting to show. So what I mean is that when you have a consumer company, they're thinking about somebody's buying journey in a way that maybe in healthcare didn't need to be thought about because people just need doctors and they'll pick one and they'll pick the one closest to the house or whoever they can get an appointment with. Well, when you have a practice down the street that's been bought by private equity and they are also front loading, they understand the sales process of getting in front of somebody's face first and making that journey a little bit smoother for the patient. Because if I have two, because we kind of shop online, right? We pull up different tabs. Typically, if I'm looking for a doctor, it's probably after work and it's probably 9 at night in my pajamas. And I'm like, okay, well, who's closest to the house? And then I pull up their websites. And then if one of them look dated or I can't find information or I can't schedule, I don't know the availability. And then I have another one that's very easy to navigate and is working correctly and I can schedule online and maybe I can text the practice or whatever. That on a user side, on a potential patient side is a different experience than maybe the previous. So you and I both know that the care is probably every doctor that's listening to this, the care is better with you. You're convinced of that. But the problem is there's no way to convey that until somebody comes in the door. And people aren't potential patients until they decide to be that. You can't address them like that. They're just people. They're just people looking for the easiest path, usually. So all of our main competitors is convenience. It always is. It's actually not the practice. It's the convenience hurdle first because the rest of it, we're all spoiled now in the age that we live in. So when your first impression is usually digital, we need to make sure that it looks maybe bigger than you are, or it looks professional, or that you take yourself seriously. And that is what people don't understand when they're looking at online. You can tell when something looks dated now. We're all just too savvy. Like if it looks like a scam or you're like, I got out of here. This isn't right. Or it's one of those situations where it's a whole chain. So the visuals is one piece of an overall brand, but the brand is also how somebody answers the phone, and it's how easy it is to book with you, and it's your reviews, and it's the way that you speak to people. A brand is how people feel when they're with you. And the best part about it is that doctors working their reputation, they're like halfway through the toughest part of branding is convincing somebody of your worth. And like with referrals, oh y'all, I mean, it's just so great. If you can get referrals going, that's like half the battle. But more often than not, when someone's starting a practice, it's usually pretty expensive. And depending on the specialty, it can be extremely expensive. And so usually the visuals and the branding and the promotion is lands in the good enough bucket. It's like this logo's good enough, this website's good enough. But really what happens is they start to pay for those decisions later on down the line when they've cheapened out on certain things. And it's like, well, why are people not coming? Why are we not getting patients? Well, it's because you probably haven't touched your Google business profile in 5 years since it was set up. There are more layers to getting in front of people. And again, it's all about convenience. But there is an order of importance. And so it doesn't have to cost $1 million. But there are tips and tricks that I like to show them. And some of it's a networking strategy. There's some free things that you can do with while you have some time before your patient load, gets too much. So I like to pull those kind of levers before we go into anything paid or even social media for that fact. Because if you hate it, it's just like pulling teeth and people can tell.
What's based on that, what's like the cheapest, fastest, easiest thing that someone can do to just start owning their own name, their own identity, a physician? Just what's the easiest thing they can do, right now?
So if they don't have a Google business profile just of their name at their location that they own, that is very important for you to have. So like my husband's practice, he has his practice Google business profile, and the Google business profile is what shows up on the map. If you want to be on Google Maps, you got to have one of those. So we have one for the practice, and then he has one for his name. Well, years ago, he was savvy enough to do that himself while he was working for this other physician. And when he left, he took that name with him to his new practice. So that goodwill came with him. I do run into situations where employers have opened up Google business profiles of a doctor's name without their consent or on their behalf. And so what happens is that when you don't have ownership of that, they can post things there. They can use it to promote their hospital or their practice or group or whatever without you even knowing. And with the name, image, and likeness laws that have been passed recently for athletes, well, a doctor's name, image, and likeness is just as important as an athlete's because other people profit off of that. So if that has happened to you, there are a couple of different things you can do. You can request ownership over that and then let them manage it as a manager. I manage several. I don't own them on their behalf. They let me in and I can manage and post and do all kinds of things for them. But you want to have ownership. If they are cagey about that, you have to decide how much you want to push. Is this a place you want to stay at for a really long time? Is this a place where you kind of don't care and you're like, I'm calling my lawyer and you're getting a letter because I need this and it's mine and it's my name and you're making money off of it. And these reviews are leading people to your practice. It's worth looking at if you have a certain amount of reviews. And I would tell any resident who is leaving and going into Dunwood training to do that on their own, do that themselves and own it, whether they guarantee reviews or not, whatever they do with it, especially and on socials too. Just claim your name. Just claim it everywhere. And don't let it fall into the hands of people that just want to make money off you. And if you decide to leave, that it is indeed against the law for them to keep leveraging your reputation and your name without your knowledge or to make money off of it.
Wow. I mean, that's something that would never have crossed my mind when I was leaving residency or fellowship. But as you explain it like that, it makes so much sense. So I guess my follow-up question to that is a physician's brand their name? I mean, are they kind of synonymous or is there a little bit of separation between the physician and the practice, or how do you navigate that?
It starts out as a name because when you open a brand new practice, nobody cares about the practice name. Nobody knows it. You just made it up. We just put a logo up. And so no one's searching for a practice name, really ever. Even if, if I'm asking a friend for a dermatologist recommendation, it's like, oh, I go to this practice. And I said, yeah, but who at the practice? That's what I want to know. I want to know who to see, not where to go. I want to know who to see. So that's why it's so important to claim that name so that we can leverage it when we're doing a brand new website for you. Your name is all over that so that it's searchable along with your practice name so people get to know it, right? And they know where to find you. But branding is so much more than just a name and the visuals, it's the way people feel. So this is such a business school jargon, but it's a culture that you create in your office. And the culture typically stems from how you practice medicine. It kind of blossoms from there. You are the one that is going to dictate how the patients are treated because you're the owner. So you decide how long they're going to wait in the waiting room. You decide who's on the phone because you're the person that hires somebody to take care of that. You're the person who works with your practice manager to decide what kind of workflows you have. And so all of these little decisions add up to be a brand. And where I see doctors and any high paying service, this is also lawyers and consultants and things, they tend to have this, your business universe and all the things that are surrounding you. And they inadvertently put themselves in the middle of it rather than the patient. So that means that when you put the patient in the middle of the business universe, you end up making some sacrifices for the behalf of the patient. So it might mean that, yes, you pay a tiny bit more for an EHR with online scheduling. And it's a pain. It's a pain for you. I understand that people don't know how to do it, but that's a systems problem that can be solved that again puts the patient at the center of the business universe rather than the easiest one for you to work with. Or the one that I've always used, so I'm just going to use this one, even though it doesn't do these things that would be easiest for people. Or I'm not willing to invest on an add-on so we can text the patients back and forth. And it's a challenge. And I know for a fact that when groups get too big, they start to lose their brand and it starts to get really dicey. And I know that there are some very big names that you would know that their practices are hanging on by a thread because the brand has been diluted by not holding on to the culture that you want for your patients. You want this experience for your patients because the way they feel about you is being in your office and being in the waiting room and those experiences, that's what they tell other people. And then that's your reputation. That becomes your brand. That becomes what you are known for. It's kind of when people think I say branding, they think I mean logos and a website. It's like that is the tip of the iceberg. That is our first impression. But that's a domino effect. There's a lot of decisions when you set up a practice and you set the standard for how your staff treats and operates around the patients. That is your brand.
So kind of what I took from that is really your brand is kind of how you choose to show up, right? And so how you treat people and how you choose to show up, and the building and the logo and things are just sometimes the visible aspects of how you show up, but really it's all the other little things too.
Yeah. And it does explain kind of if you own a practice and you have providers under you, if they are not happy at work, it affects the brand of your
Yep,
whole
makes a lot
practice.
of sense.
And so that's why hospitals don't have the best reputation for care. And it's not because you're not getting good care by the doctors there. It's like a feeling in the air. It's like a vibe that you're just like, nobody wants to be here.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's the feeling when you come into the room, it's just like, oh. And if you have staff that gives that impression off, and there are these hard decisions and standards that you have to set and you have to be on top of, but it will create an environment that you want to be at. And that's the whole point, is that you don't just create a job for yourself. You create a business that you thrive in and that you love and that can cultivate your love of medicine and that one day will be worth money for you to sell. Because I'm in the business of getting you paid.
Mm.
That's my that is all of this is to lead up. It's like you need to make money. These things are going to make you money. We're not going to overspend until we get it. And the day comes where you're like, I'm ready to retire, that this thing is worth top dollar for you to sell. Or if you're looking for providers to join you, they're not looking into your practice and looking at your first impression going, oh, there's a lot of work to do here. So it's like
Lots of layers to this, really. Yeah.
lots of layers. And I wouldn't expect anybody to be looking at this the way that I look at it. But that's why it's important to get somebody like me on board sooner rather than later. And even if it's just to explore the options that are open to you that we just kind of see around some corners, just like your lawyer can see around corners and your accountant can. I'm just one of the tools in the toolbox of kind of like, how do we make this as successful as possible? And it deserves more than a good enough.
I want to pivot a little bit here and to something that you said earlier, and then you just brought up again, is that in this process, when your husband was transitioning from a group practice to this private practice, you noticed him fall back in love with medicine again, and kind of things shifted. Is what exactly did you see change in him, and how long did that take? Has the process always been fun? Has it been hard? Like, what'd you really notice change?
Well, in the beginning, it's difficult because he you're essentially working 2 jobs. You're he was doing his finishing out his obligations here with this other practice, and then
Mhm.
when he got home, it was kinda like, "Oh, now we gotta do all this stuff. I got meetings with so and so, and his weekends were busy launching this thing." Now, when it launched, it was the level of ownership, you would be surprised at what that will do for your mind, for your psyche. So if you are stuck in a pattern of feeling like and knowing that you can't change this, it bugs you and you cannot change it, the level of agitation is like through the roof. But when you own it and you're like, you know what, it's like this right now, but I'm going to figure out how to make it different. You're so empowered. And then you get to the point where like, okay, now if he wants to take a day off, if he wants to go on vacation, if he wants to go to a conference, if he, wants to block off half a day for whatever reason, he can do that. Now, he also knows what that does to the bottom line, but he can also decide if he cares.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of
It's kind of
sense.
like, well, there's no reason to grind and to miss some of the family life and to miss the vacations. I mean, we're not getting any younger, right? So our kids are getting older and we're trying to make memories with them. Well, that week for spring break that doesn't eat up your entire year worth of time off that we can take. We understand the financial hit, but like, okay, you have a full picture. He was also able to let go of some things. He never really enjoyed call. So he was like, okay, well, I'm going to find a different way to help out around. And he found some speaking opportunities with drug company that he utilizes their drug for thyroid eye disease and he speaks on their behalf. And that makes up a little bit of that lost revenue now, but he can also turn that down and pick it up. But he doesn't have to deal with the call because he never liked it to begin with. So he is happier every day coming home. And if there's a problem, he's the decision maker on how to solve it. And just being empowered, I think, changes the whole dynamic. And also, being able to hire and fire whoever you want, whenever you want, is pretty great. I mean, we have great people. I mean, these people have been with us for almost 2 years now. We haven't had any turnover yet. It'll happen. I'm also not there day to day. I don't get involved in what they're doing, which I think was important because he doesn't want me running his practice. Let's be honest. I'm like, that is not my skill set. Not my skill set at all. And in the effort to save a buck, to just have me do it was not wise. That was a not wise decision. There's a certain dynamic when the boss's wife works in an office and people do it all the time and some people love it. I'm not sure the employees love it, but they love it. So I try to let him manage that and I manage it from afar. Whatever I'm in charge of, I manage from afar. But he's taken more time off and has made more money in the last 2 years than he did working for someone else, making them money.
Wow. So, I mean, lack of autonomy is one of the big drivers of burnout and dissatisfaction. And it sounds like the trade off of getting that autonomy has been worth it for you guys.
It has. And
Throughout. Yeah.
and, for somebody else, the autonomy might come in like, "I wanna do locums instead. That's what I wanna do." That might be the autonomy, but I think it's important to look at your situation and know that you do have options. You're a medical doctor. You have so many options. You can craft a life that works this as one avenue, and it's really worked for us, but it's also very specialty dependent, right? If you're a surgeon, there isn't even unless you wanna do ophthalmologist, that's ophthalmology work, that's locums, but for oculofacial plastics, that's not a thing. So, you might be limited by the specialty that you're in, but you do have options, and I firmly believe that you can gain more autonomy, even in your current role, if you really want it, but be prepared to look at options.
So, you guys went through a big pivot And it's you work with physicians who go through big pivots. What have you noticed about the people who are successful in navigating those big pivots? Because they don't always go well, but there have to be some common traits that people that are able to pivot and come out on the other side of the pivot successful. Like, are there things that you've noticed that allow that to happen?
So the people that have come out the most successful have been people who I do meet with their partners too. They are in from go, and we talk about everything together. And so I'm able to speak to any anxieties that they have together, and that they're doing that with everybody, with every professional that they're coming across and deciding to hire, that they're doing that together. Another thing that I've noticed is they trust their guts. They just trust it. So the people that I have had the most, I'm not going to say not a hard time, but just most friction with is the people that will second guess their decisions after we come to a consensus together. And then they're like, okay, we've landed on this logo. We've landed on this logo. This is what we're doing. This is driving the rest of what we're doing, because we have to nail that piece first, because it has to do with naming, and it matters the most. So we do that first. That's the linchpin. Well, we decide on something, and then they decide to show it to all their friends and family. And then now they want to come back and revisit when they loved it. They loved it 24 hours ago. And so you've got to trust yourself, because if you ask people for an opinion, they'll just give you one. They'll just come up with one.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll, they'll just be like, never thought of it, but here's my snap opinion about it. And they're going to love it, or they're going to hate it, or they're going to think they could do better. By that point, we have gone through multiple discussions about what vibe you want to give off, and what you want this logo to accomplish, and what tagline needs to be added, and all of these layers of getting you not just a logo that you like the way it looks. That's like the least important thing. It needs to be legible. It needs to be scalable. It needs to work for the actual patients you're serving. Because if you're serving geriatric patients, they got to read it. It's got to be legible. So all of these things, when we have discussions together, the people that have the hardest time are people that second guess, or they need validation in their decisions. Those are the people that I think have had the hardest time moving forward and getting the show on the road. So if we're going to do this, let's do it.
Yeah, analysis paralysis, I bet, is not a good thing, and when you're going on a journey like this.
It doesn't serve you in business a lot of the time. The
Mhm.
most successful people in business are people who have just thrown spaghetti against the wall, and just they've tried probably 9 businesses before they got to the one that now you know their name, just because they're not afraid to try. And so it's like, hey, you're an adult. You can change your mind. If you want to change your practice name a year from now, you can do it. Like, it's not you can close up shop, or you can change your mind, but you can also make up your mind and stick to it regardless what anybody else thinks.
It's not always the thing, right? Or the decision or the event, it's what you do after that is important, yeah.
Yeah, and how it's holding you back. If this, like, analysis paralysis holding you back, and there's probably a ton of people out there that are thinking, "Oh, I really would like a time. I really would like to go out on my own." There are people who trust their lives with your decisions. I joke all the time. It's like, "I'm not saving lives over here." Well, y'all are saving lives over there. Like, your decision-making capability is pretty damn good. So to start second guessing yourself now, when you're like, yes, this is what I want. When you're the one that's going to drive the brand, if you let other people start leeching in to that brand, you're going to have a harder time navigating it. And you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights when your decisions are good enough. They are good.
This has been really enlightening. There are a lot of things that I'm taking away from this discussion, and before we wrap up, I wanna make sure that people know where to find you and kind of know what you offer. So, I think I saw on your website that you have a free resource for physicians. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I have a free resource called the Physician's Exit Playbook, and it's just a good 12-month snapshot of a sample timeline and all the things you need to be considering if you're exiting, and who you need to talk to and when you need to talk to. So when my husband and I were going through this, that didn't really exist. And it's like my mission in life to save everybody from a Reddit rabbit hole. Just stay out of there. So it's all in this playbook, and at least you're going to have an overarching picture, a good picture of what it's going to take to, and where and what order you need to be worrying about things. It's like, well, I need to worry about this first before I do this, before I do this, before I do this. So there's that. That's free. That's on my website at digitalashagency.com. I'm also really active on my Instagram feed. It's MD Brand Pro is what it's called, and I'm on there all the time. I answer DMs. I've got little quizzes I'll put up sometimes, and I'll have ask me anythings. And people mostly know me for my brand rounds, is what I call them. And I will pick a specialty and then I will show templated logos and walk through why it's a bad idea and why they don't work. And then I will show real world examples of practices that have done it right. And people seem to enjoy those. So I have a whole bunch of different specialties that I've done. And if I haven't done your specialty, just send me a DM, be like, hey, will you talk about this particular subset? And so I'm active on there. And also everybody's more than welcome to book a call with me. Yeah, that's where you can find me
So what can people expect on those calls?
on those calls. Well, it depends on what you want to do. If you are looking to launch your own practice or you're at a point with your practice where it has gotten to a place where you are busy, but you could be busier, but you don't have the time to figure out how to get busier. There's a lot of people that will throw ideas at you and usually want to spend your money and want to charge you a bunch. So usually I'll do some diagnostics like what have you tried? What's your town like? Like how big is it? What's your competition doing? I'll just ask some poignant questions and we'll see what your best course of action is. And if I am not the right person to help you, I have a network of people that I trust to help you. Because that's important to me that you have actionable steps or things to think about when we leave the call together.
Sounds like a very high value call. One thing that people walk away from this conversation with, what do you hope that is?
I hope that they walk away knowing that they are capable, and also to protect your name, just
Mm,
guard that thing.
great advice.
Do
Yeah,
whatever you need to do.
I'm opening a Google business, a Google personal profile as soon as we leave this conversation, I
Yep,
think so.
and you might be surprised if you look it up. Maybe your employer has done one for you, and if they have, it's not the end of the world. You need to request ownership and take it from there.
Well, thank you so much. This was exactly what I hoped this conversation would be like. And, it's rooted in your real story and it's practical and honest. I think they're really actionable tips that people can take from this. So, and I hope that the audience and many physicians are going to walk away with a different relationship with what the word brand means and a sharper sense of what autonomy can look like. To anyone listening, if anything in this show lit you up, please do one of two things. One, go find Ashley at digitalassagency.com and md.brand.pro on Instagram and TikTok. Grab the Physicians Exit Playbook, book the call, and whether you're thinking about going independent next year or you're just tired of your name living entirely inside of someone else's department or practice, she's the right person to talk to. And two, if this show keeps showing up for you, do me a favor and share it. Like it, and that's how we can grow this show and this brand. So thanks again, Ashley, and thanks everybody for listening.